Welcome to this edition, a special edition of Change Chat for June 22nd, 2025. And looking forward to this one. A lot of changes have happened over the last week and a half. Some conversations started, some things going on, both with the channel and just my overall approach to things, and also with me getting a new device. So, as you can imagine, doing the I've been doing content specifically for the most part on the Supernote platform, on Rada's Supernote, starting with the A5X, then the Manta, or then the Nomad, then the Manta, and been encouraged by a lot of people, several of which who are on the stream right now. And please drop your information into the chat. I'd love to highlight that, have a conversation as we go through. But a lot of people have been encouraging me and saying, Ed, why don't you branch out? Why don't you do more videos on different devices? And I've kind of resisted that in some ways, only because of the idea that I tend to use the device I use, and I tend to commit to what I'm using and the way my workflow is going. And I don't want to have to learn a bunch of new different things while I'm trying to do all of that. But at the same time, I kind of hit bandwidth on my knowledge. Yes, I consume content from Kit and from Jay and Aaron and Rod and Voya and all of these folks that are just brilliant when it comes to books devices. So, but there's nothing like actually having a device in hand and using it. And that's the big driver and the change here. So, not really changing my focus. I'm not going to do the huge in-depth reviews the way Voya does. I'm not going to go for every device on the market like some others do. And I think that's good. I think as a YouTube creator, and especially as someone in my case who does it as a hobby and does it as part of a byproduct of the work they do, that wouldn't fit my needs or my niche. It wouldn't be what I wanted to give back to this community who's been very supportive of me. So quite frankly, I think I'm still not going to do, for the most part, things sub 10 inch unless it happens to be a dedicated reader. I'm still not going to, or maybe the phone, if we come up with a books level phone, not an e-reader, but something akin to the high break, or if one of the big manufacturers starts doing that, then I may look at something like that. But again, note taking, I'm primarily going to be at that A5 size or larger. It's just what fits my needs better. And if I'm not going to use it on a regular basis, or if I can't at least see myself using it on a regular basis, I'm not going to cover it. And I think the reasons for that being that I can't really talk through something that doesn't make a case for me. So yeah, please drop some stuff down in the chat. I know Jay said my audio was good, but I just want to make sure that everything is all right. Ask any questions. This live stream, we do have several things to talk about. A lot of different things happening, both with Supernote and books. I kind of joked with everybody in the Rants About Tech Discord that I joked that my timing of jumping into a books device was probably the craziest thing ever, with them launching a brand new beta. So as I'm watching Voya's video on how to set up your books device, and I'm watching other videos with people that I respect and I know, all of a sudden I'm now dealing with a beta because I can't help myself but jump into betas. And things are different. They're not named the same. They're not in the same spot. It's doing new things and different things that weren't there the day before or 2 days before. So it's been a learning curve. Overall positive so far, but it's definitely been a learning curve. So anyway, what questions do you have about the channel direction? So like I said, it's still going to be focused on organization. It's still going to be focused on specific use cases. In my case, academics and productivity and organization around leading teams and doing different things that way. but really interested to know if that makes sense to everybody. If you think I'm going too far afield, I don't want to be that person who gets too far, too far, too wide of a gaze, and I lose focus and I lose people in that process. I think that, what Voya and Kit and Rod do is really valuable in that they cover, and Jeffrey Moss, quite frankly, cover a large cross section of devices. I don't want to replicate that. I want to make sure that it's true to me and it's true to what I would recommend for somebody looking at these devices. But let me see. I do have Jay had a comment, I'm generally a bigger fan of books, but Rada's on fire over the last few months between ink flow, which no one else has, and now increasing feature parity. Okay, did I freeze? All right, everybody, am I back now? Let me know about this really quick. I had some issues on my side, just making sure that this is coming through. Is everyone able to hear me and see me? I had this pop up with Jay and wanted to finish this, and I've got several more in the chat. Again, sorry about that. Don't know what happened there. My camera, for some reason, just froze on me, and it sounded like everything else was okay. So generally a bigger fan of books, but Rada's on fire. No one else has. They're doing features which no one else has, and their Notes app is. I think they're pretty. I think they've always been a little better, at least so far from what I've seen with the Notes app. Now, again, that's subjective. It's my personal preference with the way that, again, without having used a Books device, I think that their Notes app on Rada is more intuitive. That would be my way of saying it. It's a more intuitive Notes app, and it's easier to use from the jump. Now, feature-rich wise, I think that they're starting to get to parity. So maybe that's where you were going with that, Jay. And if it was, let me know. I think feature-wise, they're really starting to up their game now by adding, with this new beta, the ability to add in text functions, search that text, pull in things from digests. I think they're really starting to double down on how that works, while at the same time having a dedicated drawing app and having this new ink flow app, which allows you to connect to larger creative platforms like Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and just pretty much anything you can think of that allows Wacom input. Looks like I am back up and running. Thank you all. Dan says something up with your audio. Every vid you put out, your audio is clipping. Thanks for that, Dan. Does this sound okay? I'm wondering if it's something in DaVinci when I optimize the video, if it's taking it too high, because I've been testing out to see what could be the issue. I've only had a couple of comments on that, but I want to make sure that that's actually that I'm paying attention to that. So I do appreciate it. Okay, Jay, thanks for telling me that I'm back and everything's good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's always been more intuitive in terms of feature parity, right? I mean, shapes, text boxes, etc. Absolutely. Really excited to see what they do next. I am too. I think Rada has completely changed. I don't even think it's a change. I think, quite frankly, they're so deliberate and they're so, in some cases, people feel like it's excruciatingly slow for them to pull things out, primarily because they really take their time. This digest thing has been in the works for at least a year. And I think that the way that they've rolled this out in beta is kind of genius, because I don't know that it's 100% there yet, but if you look at what the digest app looks like in the stable release, it's a complete redesign. It's a complete reimagining of what that should look like. And I think that that's where they kind of excel. So they don't just redo the digest app, but they go ahead and they add text functionality within Notes. And then they take the time to sit there and make sure that all of those things match and that they complement one another. And to me, that intentionality and that way of thinking through it are really important and can really set them apart in the market. Jay says, I don't think you're clipping now, but I'm also listening on terrible speakers. Appreciate that. It's primarily in the videos, and there is some processing that I do when it comes to the that I'm doing when it comes to DaVinci, some of the new AI features. And I think in some cases that is maybe clipping me a little bit, or it's optimizing the audio too high. And it saved me a lot of time with these new optimizations that they have, but I don't want it to dilute or make the experience worse for someone on the other side of this. So I appreciate that feedback. Please let me know if that continues to be an issue, because I want to fix it. I don't want to have you having these problems, or having trouble hearing me on videos that I've been putting out. So I really appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the comments. Keep them coming. Let me know if you can point out timestamps where there's a problem in the video so that I can go back and listen to it again. That always helps. It's not something that I'm trying to make a bad experience. Obviously, I want us to be as good as possible with this. And if the sound coming out of the mic is good enough quality, then I won't go through that optimization process. It sounds good to me when I record it, but it sounds better in DaVinci when I optimize it. But again, I want to be really careful between the two of those, and I can always create a copy and go between both. Anyway, way too in the weeds on DaVinci Resolve. We're not so much here to talk about that, but that's been a big component lately. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Just real quick, I do want to show you all the growth in my kind of e-ink landscape here. So here are the devices that I have added. And one thing I didn't notice until I put these out on the table is just how much more square the Books device is. And I think partially that has to do with that larger bezel on the left-hand side, but also I think it has to do with just the orientation of the screen a little bit. I haven't tested that and actually measured out to see if the screen is exactly the same dimensions on the Manta, or not the Manta, sorry about that, the A5X. Because remember, the Books, the Note Air 4C is a 10.3 inch device, and so is the original A5X. The new Carta panel on the Manta is a 10.65, so it's the same as the V-Woods. And then, of course, over here on my left, or on your left, you can see I've got my Kobo Aura 1, my trusty Kobo Aura 1 that I've had for a long time, and I have my MobiScribe Wave, which for a dedicated reader that allows you to do multiple to read on multiple platforms is excellent. And then, of course, down here at the bottom, I have the terminal. So I've been doing a lot of different things to kind of expand some of the things, or some of the ways that I'm thinking about e-ink, but at the same time, trying to stay true to what I've been doing overall. Jay says, yeah, it's very much the bezel. I think people like to use that as handholding as a handhold for reading. I would agree. The bezel does make it nice. Supernote, of course, on the A5X, on the Manta and the A5X, had the bezel at the bottom, but then again, that kind of top weights the device a little bit. And so I think that can cause some issues when it comes to that. So anyway, I just wanted to pop in and show kind of the whole landscape. We'll come back to each of these devices a little bit in turn, but at the same time, I want to be really, transparent that I'm not going to talk about all of these today. I mean, we'll see how long the live stream goes. I'm going to go ahead and declutter the desk while I talk here. But what are some thoughts on specific things? I haven't put out a ton of content on the Note Air 4C. I have several things in the works right now, including some videos on initial impressions and kind of where I see myself when it comes to the features that are impressing me the most so far, because I think that's going to change over time as I use the devices, as I get used to the way that they work. And I think you'll see me start to pivot and really kind of dig into those features, because again, it's all about intentionality and organization. So what are some early thoughts? And then we can kind of go through and talk about some of these. Again, feel free to drop things in the chat. The more engaged you are on this, share this out. If you think someone would be interested in talking with us and joining the conversation, would really appreciate that as well. We'll be live for at least about the next 45 minutes to an hour. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about things. And while we're waiting for the chat, I'm going to pop over and talk about, well, as a matter of fact, let's not do that. Let's talk first, since it's the newest thing. Let's talk about the Note Air 4C. So I'm going to pop back over to my camera here. And as I mentioned, some of this you'll see in upcoming videos, but at the same time, I'm going to talk a little bit about it here today live. So Aaron has the question of the day, and I think that this is going to be one of the things that is very interesting. So let's pop this up. So what would be the one feature you like on the Note Air 4C? And then Jay says, yeah, jumping off, what would be the one feature you would port from Supernote to Books so far and Books to Supernote? Wow, those are hard. And of course, having you all in here is going to make this difficult, but in a good way. So in a good way. I don't know. My favorite feature, and maybe partially a favorite feature, I love this memo. And I know, Aaron, you've mentioned this before when you've talked about this, and Rod's mentioned it. I love the calendar memo on Books. I don't know it's my absolute favorite feature, but it's one of my favorite features for sure. I love the fact that when I go to the calendar in Books, I get this little scratch pad. I can add to it in advance, so I can put reminders and things into that. And then as the day changes, then I can go back and it's on the quick launcher and it's right there for me to see. That's a huge plus. I'm largely calendar driven, so this may be answering the same question in both ways. I would port from the Supernote to Books the ability to sync your Google Calendar. I don't know why Books doesn't do that. I don't understand it so far. I know you can download your calendar, or you can actually download the apps, so you can have your Outlook calendar, you can have your Google Calendar, you can have all of that on Books as a separate thing. What I don't understand is why they don't have it so you can also have it here. And that, I think, is a miss. And then on the Books to Supernote side on the calendar, not only the memos I could do without, because the calendar app is so quick and easy to access on the Supernote. But one thing I do wish they had, and if I go back a day here, and you'll see this, I wish that Supernote would add both creation and last access date to the calendar for events, and they don't do that, or for documents, sorry, for notes, and they don't do that. I'm not as worried as much about the today's reads. I think that's a cool feature Books has, but it's not something that I need. This is something that would be really useful. And if for those of you who jump back like into the ether of Supernote back in the day, notes originally were by access date. So they did access date. Whenever you access that note, that's when it would be visible on your calendar. And you'd have no idea of knowing when you actually created that note and going back and seeing like on that day when you had that meeting and accessing that meeting. And that was a frustration point for me, because I had all of my notes in those days with those meetings. And if I wanted to look back at those meetings, then I would go back and do that. And I couldn't on the Supernote calendar. Now they've got it to where it's creation date only, which solves that problem in some ways for me. But then if I need two notes in the same day, so if I need to refer, need a reference note, I can't do that without adding it to quick access or going somewhere else for it. So to me, that's a big deal. So I'm kind of excited, I guess, by both of these with their calendar apps for different reasons. And I think that's really just an interesting tidbit. Jay, yeah, big fan of the calendar memo as well. Also like the today's reading and writing list. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the reading piece, not as much for me, although it's a nice to have, but it's very much, I do love this feature. And the Mobi Scribe Wave has a similar feature with their calendar as well. So for that, and I do like the gestures once you get used to them. I like the fact that on books, it feels more Android-like. As someone who owns an Android phone, I was surprised that my learning curve was not as high. I mean, trust me, it's still high, folks. Books is a beast. There's so much stuff on it. Hey, Shank, welcome to the stream. I don't know what you're saying absolutely to, but I'm glad you're here. Drop your names, everything down to the chat, say hi, answer, ask any questions you have. We're talking about books and we're talking about Supernote. We're talking about a lot of different things. But yeah, I think that their approach to the Android ecosystem, while a little frustrating in some ways, just because it's not a direct copy when you're used to a Samsung device, it is still familiar. And so you'll notice I've got one page. I don't have a secondary page. I've got my groupings. I've got things the way that I want them. I've got my quick launcher that I can go here. There's some duplication. I like the widgets. There's a lot of things to like about a Books device from a productivity standpoint. There really is. And I think Aaron does an excellent job of being kind of the guru of everyday driving this device. Well, not this particular device, but the Go 10.3. And I think that he has maximized and really shown how this can be used. And She says, big fan of the same features and glad to see me live. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the donation. Appreciate that. Super chats are always welcome, not expected, but always welcome. Thank you for that. It's been a while since I've been live. And Aaron, thank you as well. Appreciate it so much. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been live, a lot going on with Father's Day and different things, getting this new device and kind of learning it a little bit, trying to dive in and rethink kind of what the channel might look like. And we talked about that at the outset of the stream, but I also think that this brings up a good reason for this. So as my organization class continues to grow, we have, and let me get off of showing this really quick while we have this part of the conversation. But as the organization class begins or keeps growing and I keep getting more people, once you purchase that course and once you sign up as a supporter on Patreon, once the course is completed, and when I say completed, I mean the first revision of all 9 modules, you maintain lifetime access to that. So I'm really looking at, the future of that course. Do I start adding books modules or books content in modules that I've already created on a second or a third pass? Or if I end up with other devices, again, it's all about how you do things. It's all about how you organize. And if I can show different ways to organize using different devices, then to me, that becomes a more powerful, exercise over time, because you may not be using the Supernote. And while a lot of the things I do can be universal, you still have to have some familiarity with your tool to be able to do that. Up, and there he is, the man himself, Rants About Tech. Rod's in the house, and thank you so much, Rod. Appreciate it so much for that. It's good to see you here. You are obviously the master of the live stream, but I'm doing my best over here. We've had a glitch so far. Hopefully that's the only one, but we will see moving forward. We were just talking about the Note Air C or Note Air 4C, and I'm going to go back to that really quick, because one thing that I highlighted early on as I talked about, or I've kind of talked about this. So a recent blog post that I wrote, I used the infinite notes. And infinite notes, I'm both intrigued and concerned about. And let me tell you why on this. So see, I had to pull it back over to the side here. One thing about books that's really interesting is they seem to really be trying to push where the market might go. Now, Infinite Scroll has existed on Remarkable for a long time. And Rod just did a video, I think it was on your last live stream, Rod, where you talked about that break feature that they have to where you can select everything below and slide down, which I think is a really neat trick to be able to insert things. What's interesting about the Books take is that for someone who's a non-linear thinker like I am, it kind of gives you the real idea of an infinite canvas, almost like a OneNote. It's like they're trying to mimic that in some way, but also the ability to just keep scrolling up and down like you traditionally would think of an endless note. But why it's really cool and interesting, and if you see me reaching over and looking weird, it's because this is kind of a harder setup to hit the buttons right. Come on. There we go. So one thing you'll see here, and I'll hold it up here to the camera, is a new pin feature. So the idea that you can pin anywhere on these notes. So you'll notice there's a pin here for the overview. And then what I did as a test is I went to pin 1. Now that went over here to this test marker. Now when you go, you'll see the little pin right above it. When I go to move this, you'll see how far that is over on the page. I mean, it's way over there. So what they've done, which is kind of a nice little sleight of hand here, is they've decided to allow you to they've decided to allow you to create a floating outline is the best way I can describe it. So for, Aaron, for you, maybe this is going to be really cool. So it's kind of like their outline feature, but you drop a pin wherever you want it to be. So if you're doing a large mind map, if you're doing a lot of different things, all of a sudden you're going to jump out and get this ability through an outline feature to jump all over the page. Now they don't have that multiple selection below. So that's going to be interesting to figure out how they do that. And the frustration I ran into is I wrote this blog article thinking I would be able to export the text. And Jay got a frantic email at 1:30 Central Time about when I was going to throw all of this out, all of this new content out. And I said, how do I export this thing to text? And he said, oh, just hit the AI button, which works in a traditional note, not in the infinite note. So I tried first to circle this, recognize it on an individual basis. It popped up with large text. It didn't work well. And I show that in an upcoming video, so you'll be able to see that. Let's catch up on the chat real quick. So Rod, glad to see you live. Hello. She-Ink, yes, absolutely. Add in more devices. We need Books OS decoded like Aaron does on 2530 Media and Rod does on Rants. Would love to see how your use case puts a spin on other devices. Books users will be over the moon if you can bring add organizational magic to Books. I don't know about that. I don't know that my organizational skills are anything magical, but they are useful, at least to me. Agreed. Ed's feedback will add some perspective. Thank you for that, Rod. And then Jay dropped in, I left my Go 7 with the 4.1 beta at home by mistake, so I haven't seen any of this yet. So it's interesting. And Rod, good call on the infinite notes. Thank you for that, because it's, to me, everybody keeps asking Supernote to add infinite scroll, and I'm of two minds on that. I like pages, always have. I think it works a lot better for outlining, at least in the Supernote ecosystem. It definitely works better for the outline feature, although this marker tool in Infinite Notes on Books could replicate that, because from what I've seen on Books, and Aaron, I can finally talk about this because I've now used them both. There are some similarities between the outline tool and the headings tool on the Supernote, but not directly. My understanding is that Books ties it to the page and not the text. Supernote ties it to the text and not the page. Now, if you move those pages around, Books will auto update, so it will move and like revise your outline. The issue being that if you move just the text component somewhere on the Supernote, it's going to recognize that that's now on a different page, if that makes any sense. So that to me, you were right that they had a similar take on certain aspects, but you still get a lot more fluidity, I would argue, on the Supernote side of it currently. Aaron says, in the Infinite Note, you can have a convert to text working in the background, easy for exporting. Yeah, see, that's what's interesting. So I couldn't figure out how to make that happen. Jay had told me, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't have that option when you press the AI button here of the text in the background and then doing that export. I don't know if that's just I'm not configuring something correctly, but your notes on your regular note pages will have a fourth option here. And that's what was different. So I couldn't actually export the Infinite Note. Just really, I think it's an awesome feature. I think that the AI features on this are actually pretty cool so far from what I can see. Just digging into it early, I don't know that it will. I don't have a Viwood, so I can't speak 100% to this, but the idea that you can, in a document or anything else, you can select text, hit AI, especially from the Neo reader, and have it summarize a paragraph. Pretty cool. And Jay says, I'm with Ed on this. I know a lot of people seem to love Infinite Scroll, but I need my pages. I get lost on Infinite Canvas. I agree that, when I'm doing note taking specifically, Infinite Canvas may be just too much for me. I don't know that I could use it effectively. Let me take a quick drink real quick, and you'll see one of the mugs the kids have got me before. But what it is the yeah, Jay says Ed will never have a Viwood. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I like the idea of the AI implementation on that from what I've seen, but the biggest issue I have with Viwoods, that doesn't come down to their hardware, their software, or anything. It's primarily on their pricing strategy. I just wish they would be transparent and say that their products are worth what they're charging. To me, that makes a lot of sense. That way, if you do a real sale, it's real. It's not, hey, this is worth $200 or $300 more than what you're paying. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again. I've done it before. But at the same time, I think that's my biggest issue with them, is that they're overpriced in their suggested retail price, not in what they're actually selling for. I think they're fairly competitive there. Aaron, yeah, it is only in the regular note. So it's an interesting thing. It may be just a limitation in this beta phase of them trying to figure out how to do that. My guess, and the developers among us can tell me if I'm right or wrong or on this, is that they would have to take an Infinite Note and convert it to pages to be able to do what that does. Maybe not. But at the same time, and the fact that this scrolls both horizontally and vertically. So the fact that it's a true infinite canvas, I don't know how the AI would be able to determine order of operations or anything like that to be able to export this. If I'm using it this way, it's very straightforward because it's very linear. Otherwise, it could get really complicated really fast. So does that make sense? Jay, you're one of our developers. Let me know if that works. And then Aaron agrees he needs regular pages. And I do agree. And I think Books did make the right decision there uh, when it comes to making it two different note types. You know, kind of like Supernote did with the whole a standard note versus a real-time recognition note. And everyone in the community who has asked for infinite scroll on the Supernote, except for those that are diehard, that's the only way they work, has said it should be a choice. And I think that, you know, Books got that right here. The idea that it's a choice of I want a regular note or I want an infinite scroll note, knowing that those are going to behave differently. And let's see, Jay says they would have to apply some kind of bounding in order to give the transcriber places to start and stop. Yeah. So I think that's what's hard. And maybe it could be something as simple as, I don't even know if it's simple, but yeah, I haven't been able to figure out, even with circling text and the smart lasso, it works. Although one interesting thing, any of those of you who have both devices, Supernote is a little different in one way. So if I go into this black area here of the border, so if I write over a little bit, it still captures my stroke, because a lot of times I accidentally get too close to an edge. And when I'm circling something, Books breaks that stroke and sees it as two different strokes. So if I'm trying to do the lassoing tool or the lasso function, a lot of times it will misrecognize the lasso. And it even is on my toolbar here. So if I go to circle something, and I know you all are going to love this, I'm going to use the Books pen. So go ahead, blow it up in the chat. Tell me how much it's trash. I like it. I don't like it as much as my Heart of Metal pens, but for waiting on a traditional stylus, I guess you would call it, it actually feels pretty good. But see, watch what happens here when I go to circle this. And I'm going to go a little bit behind the border there. And hopefully it doesn't make a liar out of me real time. And see what it did? Do you see here? There is some border that it left. So in this case, it actually did recognize the lasso tool, which in some cases it doesn't do. But it also broke my strokes. So you have this weird, you know, issue that it's almost like they've given it so much leeway from the two or from the sides to where it won't write. Whereas on the Supernote, if I go off into this other area, it's going to give me a little bit of leeway, a little bit of give. And that is just, let's go ahead and undo that so that I don't have it. And that's just odd to me. And it's more on my fault. It's more on my side because it's just learning a new interface, but it's something you have to be aware of. And I think it's something they could have done better on that. Rod says he's never considered the limitations of having an infinite note. Yeah, there are a lot, I would think. I mean, for mind mapping, I think it would be brilliant. I really do. It's why I use Atelier to mind map currently, because you can't zoom or you can't zoom in and out on the Manta. If they ever get that, then I could use that for mind mapping and be fine. I could see using this on the Books platform for mind mapping, because you can zoom in and out and then you can scroll. And all of that makes for a pretty cool, you know, function here. So you can move that around and make that bigger or smaller and then still be able to get where you need to get. So it's kind of cool. But those pins, I think, is what they're kind of banking on, having this be a really useful function. Let's jump back over to the chat real quick. A lot of good conversation over here. I also see there isn't a pages view like normal notes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do get this when you go to scroll. So you're able to see, and I don't know if you can see that, Aaron, on the screen, but you're able to see kind of where the text is. But again, that's where those pins, I think, would be really useful to be able to like start, okay, this is the end of a thought, this is the end of a topic. That's my take. Again, very hot take, very quick. Yeah, Rod says he gets that too. Let's see, mind mapping would be nice, but other things do it so much better. Maybe. I mean, I think better than Atelier. I think Atelier for me is a workaround when it comes to mind mapping. I think something like this with the pins or something because you could drop a pin on your different topics, and then when you went to that pin, it would explode that topic. I also think that something like the Notes app on the Supernote would give you kind of a cool thing going on there that you could use. Uh, but again, they haven't gone that far. Um, Jay throwing in the shade. You can use your HOM on the N84C, no damage to worry about. Not doing it. Rod, of course, there's the trash. I don't mind it. And this isn't even the Pro Pen. And let me tell you why. Okay, here we go. We're going to do this, Rod style. Um, so I don't mind it for a couple of reasons. One, once you know that this is flat on the edge of the cap as well, so once you know that this is also flat on the edge of the cap, it snaps to the device really well, so I can keep the cap, which adds a little bit of balance on the back end of it. It's also nicely balanced here. And I think that's really interesting for me anyway. Again, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm still learning it, but I like it better than I thought I would. And I don't mind the writing feel at all. And I think that's, again, the difference just between the two platforms. So we'll go back over here real quick. Let's see. I don't think I'll be using this implementation of Infinite Note. Too many limitations and quirks. Yeah, I think they need to get it worked out. I don't think I'll be using it either, at least not in my daily use. I'll do some more testing on it, which I have done. I may try to mind map with it just to have some fun, but we'll just have to see. The pen is trash compared to what we like to use, but they actually work good, but they're trash. uh, yeah, I mean, to me, if you're just starting out on e-ink, I think it's fine. I mean, if you get a Books device, you are not going to hate this pen. I just don't think you will. I think it'll work fine for what it's designed to do. It's designed to pair with this screen, and it's designed to kind of simulate that scratchy feeling. And if you aren't writing as hard as I do, I don't think the nibs will spin near as bad for someone who's doing that. But at the same time, yeah, if you're used to a heart of metal pen, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is gorgeous. I mean, and it's got a 0.3 millimeter nib. So it's beautiful. And no, Jay, I'm not going to write on it. So, and I do like the Norris Staedtler Jumbo, but what I said about that, and I put this in the Discord, it's one of the few times that I went to write on this thing with it, and with this rubber tip, I out loud to myself with no one else around, I said, nope, and just stopped. I was like, nope, not going to happen. Didn't like it. Didn't like it with that finer tip, which does feel okay on the Manta, but not great. I still prefer, you want to talk about a trash pen, the MobiScribe pen is trash. It's just this shouldn't exist. I mean, they give it to you free, so it's got an eraser on the back. I don't, it's okay, but I wasn't going to write on the MobiScribe anyway. But this is so light, and it just feels like a tiny piece of plastic that shouldn't have even been included. Sorry, but that's my take on that. But for $99, I'm also not going to complain. I wish those pins were applied to all notes. Yeah, I think the pins are actually pretty innovative. To me, they're more in line with what Supernote does with the heading feature, because you can put it right next to a piece of text. So they may, I don't know, that's really cool, Aaron. I'm glad you said that. That actually would be better, if you ask me, than the outline feature, because of the fact that it was more doable. Now, what you lose there are the ability to add subcategories, which Supernote doesn't have. So I think that's going to be, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Again, Books is highly innovative. Sometimes I just don't think they think through enough the implementation, and eventually they get it better, but they just don't do it, at least right now. but they're always pushing. They're always doing new things. And to me, that's really cool. Um, yeah, Aaron, I know I need a Lammy. I have the Safari Twin and I love that, but don't have the AL Star. And I gave the Crystal, I can't remember the name of that one right now, but the one that they were sending out when I reviewed the Manta, I gave that to Trey since he uses the Crystal Nomad, and it just kind of made sense. Keep the pen, change the nib. Again, I think so. I don't know that I would do a ceramic nib on this. Again, there are some times that I'm very much old school and I follow the rules, and I wouldn't recommend it until I know for sure, just because I don't want to give someone bad advice. Once this thing between Rod and Voya is settled and we know for sure the impact of ceramic nibs on these devices, I will recommend all day long if Rod is right. And I will do a mea culpa video saying that Rod is right. But right now it's still up in the air because they're both testing. Let's see. Rubber nibs are the worst. Yes, they are. Jay says, the Moby Scribe pen is awful. I tried replacing the tip with all kinds of things. It remained trash. Yeah, it's because it is the true stereotypical plastic stylus. There's no weighting involved in it at all. It reminds me of a Palm Pilot stylus, just a piece of plastic. And so that would be my take on it. And then Aaron says, Scribe nibs are great. I've heard that. I've not used one, but I think so. And Rod, I think this is probably about my comment of not using the ceramic nib. Agreed. It's fair. I think I respect both you and Voya, and I think you're both taking this with different tacts. And I think that it's at the end of the day, either somebody's going to be right or you're both going to throw your hands up and go, there's no way to really know unless we get in a laboratory and do this in, lab conditions. But I don't know. And right now I would hate to give somebody that advice and say, go ahead and use this. And what happened to Brandon with the titanium nib on the Remarkable, the titanium nib somehow killed his EMR in his Remarkable stylus. I don't know what that was about, but it worked and then it just stopped. I don't know if that's commonplace, but it was something he thought enough. He had to put that out there. You know me, I'm cautious by nature. So let's go on to some other news. So we'll come back to the Note Air C at some point here. And Captain Morgan just joined the chat. Hey, Captain Morgan, Lammy's pretty good on the 4C. I love the HOM on the Supernote. I would never risk it on a BOOX. Yeah, I'm in that camp too, just for now. And then Jay says, still in love with the titanium nibs on the Scribe Premium and the Stadler. Yeah, and if they work for you, Jay, again, let us know. Maybe they're going to continue to work. I just want to be real careful when I say stuff like that. So let's jump over really quick to some different news here. So I want to talk about this new Supernote beta. And, this is every time, and I said this on my video that I put out yesterday, every time that I think that Supernote has kind of plateaued for a little while and they're going to take a step back, or they amaze me. They do something that is completely groundbreaking, and I don't think that's overstating this. So for those of you who've been with the digest function since the beginning, it was always very cool. You could draw brackets, or in a PDF, you could select with a specialized tool. So EPUBs, you had to draw your brackets. PDF, specialized tool. I really wish they'd fix that. I've told the Rada team, I think they will get there eventually. But you could select that text, and then you could add handwritten annotations. So you could write out different things. Someone put a comment this morning saying that there was always a scroll bar there to allow more annotations. Not when it first launched. They may have added it later and I missed it. But you have this place you could put annotations. Now, the challenge for them was always that it didn't really let you do a lot of other things with it. So you could add these handwritten annotations, and then you could export both the clipped item and the annotations to a PDF, and you could have that grouped together. Already kind of a powerful, cool tool that nobody else really had implemented that way. But everybody was like, okay, but I can't put this into a note that I may be writing on a longer form piece of content that I'm trying to create. I can't edit the actual text that I put in. And there's just a lot of things that's what it did, and that's all it did. So with Supernote now, and what they've done here is, and let me make this bigger so it's a little bit easier to see on the screen. And what they've done, and again, you know, this is where I'm a fanboy of their approach. And they didn't release this half-baked. I mean, it's still a beta, so there are still some things they're going to need to tweak and they're going to want to do differently. But you can't say it's half-baked. They have intentionally thought through what this feature was going to do. And so it starts off with the idea of the text box feature. And then it goes on to the digest. But in the text box, direct insertion of text box, which Books already does, so not groundbreaking on that particular piece of it. Recognition and conversion of lasso selected handwriting into text, which is really cool, because once you recognize it, then you can circle it again and do all of your Supernote things with it. So it does a lot of really cool stuff there. And I've got a dedicated video on this, so I'm not going to like demo all of that here, but I want to talk through it. Support adding stuff from the digest. That is a huge change and a huge difference in the way this functionality works. So the digest before lived as its own thing, and it still does, but it also now can be integrated directly into notes. And for that is a huge deal for what they were thinking about doing here and what people have been asking for. Supports setting text as bold and italics, adjusting alignment and font types and styles. One thing here, and I may do one demo here. Hold on just a second. Let me grab my Manta. And now I get to use my Heart of Metal pen, so that'll be good for me here. So we'll do this in real time because I want to show you. I won't show it on Books because that was my frustration the other night. It does some kind of, when you convert the text with the AI feature, it blows it out to this huge font size. And then the only way to fix that is to select everything in the box and then change it. Supernote goes with kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, and I think that's where they may do some tweaking down the line. The text box, and let's pop over here real quick to the demo. So let's go ahead and we'll put, you know, here is a test. And then I'm going to lasso this. And then I am going to go here, and here I can recognize this text. I can recognize as a digest. So now that communication between the two, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you can actually export from a note to a digest. So that's really cool. So you could take notes and you could say, you know what, I want to have this for later and I may want to tie it to something. So I'm going to go ahead and add this digest. But let's do the recognized text. So you go ahead and you recognize your text. Oh, I just did it as a digest. So let's cancel out of that. Try this one more time. The joys of a live stream. So we're going to go here. We're going to recognize this text. And now you notice it automatically converted that. Now it didn't, and I accidentally put away my toolbar, and you have to double tap to bring that back. What it didn't do, and so I can move this around, I can resize, I can move it around, I can change the size of the font, but that's global. So I can change the size of the font if I want to, and they only give you up to 86, so that's as big as you can get. If you have more text, you can resize it and it will automatically flow, which is really cool. You can add digest entries to this same text box, and you get all of those there. So cancel out of that. You can also change your fonts. You can change your alignment. Again, that's a global feature, which isn't my favorite thing. I wish they'd allow you to do some more formatting, but as a first beta, I think it's really cool. But here's where it gets interesting. So when you circle it now, I'm on text. So there we go. When I circle this now with my gesture, now I can do all of the things, all of the Supernote things. I can make it a header. I can make it a keyword. I can add a link to it. I can go down here and I can still recognize it as a digest. I can still create a new event or a new task. Really, really cool. And what's really interesting for here, and we'll see what Supernote does with this, but so now I've made that a heading. And when I go here, it's now a heading in text on the side. And I'm wondering if they're moving towards the ability to create this, or to have this create like Books does when you export, that be recognized as a PDF table of contents. I don't know that they're doing that yet. I haven't had time to test it, but I'm curious if that's what they're doing. So to me, this whole idea of the digest, being able to do everything from within the note here, is really, really interesting. So let's go ahead and pop back over to the screen share. And Captain Morgan says, Supernote beta looks great. Those improvements in the digest could be a game changer for me. I might have to buy a Manta as well as a Nomad. Yeah, it is something that's really cool. And just to be clear, the only thing, two things about the Supernote ecosystem. So the A5X, and I keep going back and forth, and She-Ink and I still need to have a conversation about this. Kindle just dropped support for anything before, I think it is Android 9. So now the Kindle app is effectively bricked on the A5X. InkFlow is being developed by Supernote to work on the A5X, but it isn't there yet. So those are the only two things currently that don't exist on the A5X or the A6X. So it's really important to understand that all the other features, if you have an older Supernote device, are there, including what I just showed you. So it's still really hard for someone who's looking for those types of organizational features. It's hard to say if you own that device that you have to upgrade. Now, at the same time, side loading is easier on the Manta and the Nomad. It's a newer version of Android. It's being more supported. All of that is true. So if it's your first purchase, I think it's a no-brainer to buy one. If it's not, and you already own one, I think then it's a more nuanced conversation. But anyway, let's go back over here. So you can adjust alignment and font type. We already talked about that. Supports using custom fonts and built-in handwriting fonts. And it supports searching for text box content in a global search. So this will be indexed as well in their search feature, which is already excellent. So I think that this just adds to that really useful case that they're making. Then as you scroll down here, the Digest app is optimized, and they really understate this in a way. They should have said Digest reimagined the Digest app, because it really is totally different. It doesn't look the same as it did before, and it doesn't function the same. It's other than the brackets and the selection tool, everything else is different. And I think that's what's so cool about what they did. They're understating why this is a great feature. And so it supports creating Digest directly in the Digest app, supports recognizing lasso selected content, supports searching and categorizing Digest, and supports syncing Digest to the desktop and mobile apps. Now that is a really cool feature. And it's really interesting that they decided to go that route. And then they added a clipboard feature. Now, currently, this only works within the text feature. So if you create text and you click on that edit button to go into that box, you can copy and paste. So from that box, you can't copy and paste from a Digest entry, and you can't copy and paste from a PDF or any third-party app. So it's important to note that's something that people have been asking for. It's not there yet. Now, there may be a workaround to that, and I will let you know more once I test that theory. But I am thinking that if you pull in a digest entry as a text box, copy that, and then paste it, that you can get around it. But we'll have to see how that works. And that's kind of duplicative work. And then they had some other optimizations. So that part's not as important, I think, is what we're talking about here. But I do want to show you the app integration. So I have, let's go ahead and look. So over here on this left-hand side, you'll see that you have your to-do app integration, and then you now have Digest. And Digest is really cool. So you've got sources, which is the way the traditional Digest worked, and then you've got your categories. And I've created a test category here. Now you can create as many categories as you want, but here's where it gets interesting. So I can create a new digest right from here. I can rename and delete. This level of cross functionality I'm not seeing anywhere else. Let me know if you all see this on Books. So far, Books, from what I've noticed, has a good mobile app. The web interface is not bad. They don't have a desktop app that I've been able to find. And their web app works a lot like Supernote's web app, at least for me, and there's no local copy type piece. So let me know in the comments or in the chat, and then later in the comments if you're watching this on replay, let me know what you think. But here's where it gets interesting. So I double click here. Now when I double click here, and let me move myself out of the way here so I can get down in the corner. There we go. Now you should be able to see me out of your way. And so this is where it's interesting. I can edit all of this with my keyboard from within the app. So I can add new entries right here. If I can type, I'm at an angle. So there's a new entry. And this is actually the text that was the annotation itself. Everything below that, and shout out to JB Glossinger for the use of his book while I do this to show you. All of this I added in, and I typed this in. And when I pull it into the digest, it won't retain the formatting, but I can do all of that again. So I can hit the returns, and I can live edit there. It's really, really cool. But now look down here below. Here's text that I added as an annotation. And I can add here as well. So I can add this, here is an annotation. And I can click here and I can see my handwriting. Now I can't add handwriting here, obviously, but how cool is all of that? I mean, maybe it's just me because I'm a Supernote fan, but to me, just the sheer functionality of this, and then being able to go back from that hyperlink at the top to the book itself is really, really cool. What do you all think about that? Drop it in the chat. Let me know, what are your thoughts on this beta and the way that this works so far? Come back over to the discussion real quick. What do you all think? Drop something down there. I think it's genius. I think, I made the comment in the Discord the other night that Supernote and Books are kind of passing the beer back and forth. Every time one of them does something, another thing comes out from the other one, like the infinite note, and Books says, hey, wait a minute, no, hold my beer. And then Supernote comes out and says, oh, you think that's good? Look at this new digest thing that we just came out with. Hold our beer. And I just think it's really, really interesting that these two platforms, which have different functions, different functionalities, are also both vying for a similar space. Again, I would argue that there's a different use case. I would say that the person who needs to be connected to more things all at once, Books is probably your way to go. The people who are very much heavy note takers, and that's 99% of what they need to do, and they need to do that easily, low bar to entry. It's more intuitive on the Supernote platform. you can do what you want to do quickly and easily there without having to learn all of the features. I'll admit, in the Neo Reader, when I first pulled up that toolbar, and quite frankly, Volley didn't cover that one yet. I need to customize the Neo Reader toolbar, because that thing is crazy. Uh, there's so many options. I don't even know where to begin. But the fact that you can do all of those things is really cool. The Neo Reader, I do have to admit, is one of the coolest things on the Books platform. So let's see what we got in the chat here. So Sheink says it's brilliant. Rod had one up there, I thought, that said he loved it, but it's disappeared out of my chat now. We've got, I think I'm on top chat, so let me go to live chat. If I'm missing something, folks, let me know. Sheink said, LOL, yes, Rod, read my mind. Captain Morgan says, agree that Supernote has depth without the complexity of books. I think that's well said. And I think that that's where, when you think about these devices and you think about what they're good at and what they're good for, I think it's really interesting. And it's funny too, because I saw books, or I saw Rod's conversation about transparent screensavers the other day. And hold on just a second. I'm trying to, oh, it's on sleep. About transparent screensavers and the Books platform versus like the Nomad and the Supernote platform. And I think they serve different purposes. I think on Books, I like the fact that it's there, and if I'm going to keep something up, although it does take the front light off, which makes it harder to read on a Kaleido screen, but if I'm going to keep something up, like my calendar memos or something like that, and as a reference point, I think it makes a ton of sense. But you have to wake the device back up, and that causes a little bit of friction in my workflow. The Supernote, although it may expend, I've never really tested the difference. I think Jeffrey Moss might have done a test on the no load shutdown and how that impacts battery. But at the same time, the minute I put my pen to it, it wakes up. So I don't have to think about it. If I have something there and I need to make a quick note or I need to jot, same basic functionality in a lot of ways, but it changes the dynamic a little bit, if that makes any sense. Sheing said, if Books Calendar was an app I could sideload onto the Supernote platform, my world would be complete. But would it? And this is my question. And we talked about this, I think, before you joined Sheing. I think the Books and Supernote platforms both have functions that I love, but neither one of them can replace the other. To me, the only thing that Supernote should add is two things. One is the calendar memo, something like that, or allow me to write on the daily view, which is something we've asked for a while. Second is both creation and last viewed date on the note for what you see down in the little note memo section. Books, I think, is a huge miss not integrating with Google and Microsoft, because I need that in my calendar on the Supernote. I really do. And eventually, over when we saw on the left-hand side, they have To Do, they have Digest. The calendar is going to be there as well in the app, which theoretically would allow me not to even have to open my Google Calendar on my app, because I could create, edit, view, all of that from the Supernote app, and it would push back to my Google Calendar. If they get that done, it will be ridiculous. So pretty cool on that. And then Captain Morgan says, I prefer the Supernote calendar, but the memo book style would be great on Supernote. I agree. I think that would be a huge plus. And then Shing says, yes, or give me the today's note and read feature of the Books calendar app. Yeah, the today's note does show up, but you have to create it in the same day on the Supernote, and that's frustrating. I wish you could create future notes and tie them to a day. Yeah, and it lets me write on today and see my homepage. Yeah, that is a killer feature for books. It really is, the memo. And Captain Morgan's agreeing. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, and this is coming up in a video, but please keep throwing questions into the chat because I'm very much interested in what you have to say on this. But I want to demo again, and we're back to the Note Air Force 4C. So when I go to demo, all right. Now, you all, if you watched my video, saw me, and let me turn off auto rotate for this. So go to turn that off. All right, auto rotate is now off. All right, so because I'm going to be messing with the case. And for those of you who saw my video, you know that this case I both love and is my nemesis. So the origami feature really is not as hard as it seems like it is. All you do is pull it up and then you collapse this one piece here and you're done. So it's really just that easy to make that happen. And if you want to be able to have it in a different orientation, you can do this. And now it sits up in a different orientation. So just some different ways of doing that. It's not near as complicated as I made it sound, and it works really well. What I'm frustrated about with this case, and I put this in an upcoming video, is, and it's still doing auto rotation even though I thought I turned it off. It's very hard to write on with the case. And you all let me know if this is an issue for you. The case makes it a little bit higher, which that part doesn't bother me as much, but there's wobble. And I don't know if you can probably not see that, but there's wobble to it. And so it makes it uneven when I go to try to write on it. And that bothers me. And not to mention, it's very heavy. So this is a very heavy package with everything on it. It's kind of industrial in a good way. I mean, it's very protective. The case is made out of really good materials, but it's also, you're going to get the magnet issue because there are very strong magnets in this, and you're going to get the issue of just, it's clunky to write in, and you don't want to leave it open like this. So I don't know why it keeps closing on me. So what I find myself doing, and it is strong, the magnetism is strong with this one, is I take it out of the case. And when I take it out of the case, of course, we all know what's about to happen. And this is why we need rat feet, or what do you call them now, Rod? What do you call the stoppers on the back that you created? But this is why we need them, because now it moves. Now, I don't have as much problem with that. I can still write fairly easily. It's not a big issue, but it's not ideal. So this idea that when you look at it compared to the Manta, go ahead and grab that. The Manta, both if I took the case off, isn't going to go anywhere. Or if I open it, now it's still not going to go anywhere. And I think that, again, levels of friction, what you're used to, how it works. This combined with the case is very heavy. So I'm falling behind on chat, folks. Give me a second. I'll catch up here. I still don't know what the sync button does on the Books Calendar app. Me either, Aaron. I'm glad that I'm not the only one. I have no idea what that is for. I don't know if does it sync with the device, but I thought it was set to auto sync. So I don't know what it does either, and I don't know why it exists. The quick menu is awesome on Supernote, but I need those two things or my brain short circuits. Yeah, I think that, the quick access is a great feature on the Supernote. I would like to see some kind of memo function. That would be really cool. Captain Morgan says Books Case Origami hates me, just like Supernote Star does. Got a lot of good chat here. Thanks for jumping in. Anyone have an idea why they can't get us those two things when they can add so much depth to the digest? These things seem simple by comparison. That's a good that's a good point, but I can tell you in talking with the RADA team, and let me pop back over now that I've talked about the origami case here. Digest has been on the roadmap for a long time. So they haven't had as many requests for the calendar function. They've had specific requests, and I think they're trying to figure that out. That's the handwriting on the daily view and a couple of other small things. I think overall people are satisfied with the calendar if they use it on a regular basis. And I think that that's why they didn't prioritize that. That would be my guess. But in my conversations with them, they've also been very clear about the digest being a hot topic and something that they very much are prioritizing because it needs to be, it's connected to so many other things the way they're doing it here. And so I think it's not that the digest, yes, is a big deal, but the digest also is part of the text box and the formatting and note compatibility. And so from a research perspective, in my case, and for other people, it could be for different reasons. From a research perspective, the calendar is less important to me. And from a note-taking perspective, in what I do, the calendar is less important for me. And I think a lot of other users were in that same boat. It's not minimizing the importance of the calendar, but it's saying that if you have limited time and resources, where are you going to put that R&D? And I think Supernote made the conscious decision to put that into the digest and note-taking features the way that they've reimagined this. That would be my guess. It says, I take my cases off once I reach my desk. They're just too much. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I do now for this books product, but even the Supernote A5X, although it gave it a little bit of an incline when I opened it up, it wasn't bad, and I would leave it in the case 90% of the time because that mechanical rail, for one thing, it would take a little longer to take the case off, but also because it's just a good experience. It never really bothered me, and it kept the device stable. But I have to take it off with the Note Air 4C. It just doesn't work as well for me if I don't. And yeah, Rod said yes, but is the force strong with it? Yes, it is. That was the pun I was trying to go for. The magnetism is crazy on that case. You really have to pull to get it off of there. And then Shink, of course, yeah, it's crazy. I do wish these folio cases had a protective area on the exposed sides. Oh, yeah, I think that cases are hard. And I don't want to belabor that, but Captain Morgan, I think you're right. Cases are hard. A lot going on. Okay, they're the tech feet. So if you all haven't checked out Rod's channel over there at Rants About Tech, he has a store and he has tech feet. They used to be called rat feet, but now they're tech feet. And that will help you with the slipping. Desk mats, yep, Shink, that's a good workaround. Again, I don't have the issue as much. Just because of the way I place my hand, and it could absorb some of the wobble. Mashup Mike, good to see you in the chat. Welcome. I'm trying to catch up on chat now. Just updated your super notes. That's great. A lot of new features around the text boxes and everything. Rod says, agreed, Shink. I've been using an oversized one on the desk. Oh, is that what it's for? I thought it was on the calendar app itself. Jay, I'm not sure. Let me look now. Let me pull this up and let's take a look real quick and see what we've got going on. So let's go back to my home screen. Let me switch view here. Oh, yeah, I forgot. If I'm in notes, I disabled my bottom gestures because that was causing issues. So, all right, so let's go to the other screen here. And let's go to our calendar memo. No, see, there's a sync screen right here, Jay. I don't know if you can see that. Right up next to the date icon. And this is just taking you back to today's date. But then there's this sync button. I don't know what it does. Anybody enlighten me? Let's see. I think sync might be for creating a new calendar event. No, we're talking about the Note Air 4C. The sync button, Captain Morgan, on the Supernote is usually for syncing the device manually. And then there is you're correct. There is a sync on the Google Calendar that you can manually sync, but it also does it automatically if you enable that. So you're 100% right. There's a lot of ways to do that. Shink, the Stars Driver nuts on the Supernote, just like the scribble erase on books. I actually have been liking the scribble erase. It's not great, but it's not accurate all the time. And by the way, Rod, just so you know, the Supernote beta has caused issues with the lasso erase. I've never had an issue with lasso erase. And for some reason in the beta this time, the pen position to your fingers is not the only thing creating an issue. So hopefully they're working on that. So it's no longer user error. There's actually an issue. And it appears to be whether or not your fingers are above or below. And it's weird. It's not to the right or the left. Captain Morgan said had to turn off scribble erase on books. There's some desk mat. I'm trying to find things here. The desk mat's all over the place. Everybody's happy with the desk mats. And Shink asked if Mike is going to use the digest, and Mash It Mike says, I'm going to make a use case if I have to. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, one thing about the digest feature to me is, as someone who's done research and someone who's graded papers and done a lot of things with digital copies of different documents, this new digest is a game changer. Being able to add all of these elements in the 3 different places, the mobile app, if you're really diehard, the desktop app, and on the device, and do it as text, as writing, and as attached to the actual quote. So if I was writing a paper and I was taking quotes out of something, I could sit there and I could reformat all of that and include quotations and then export it out of that device into a note and then export that note as a document. So I haven't gone all the way through that formatting and that use case yet, but I really do think it's interesting. One thing that I'm curious about, and I don't know if anybody else has had this same question or thought as I have. Everybody talks about this charging port, which I agree is in the wrong spot because you can't charge it with the device in the case. But I wonder if at some point Books wasn't thinking of having a USB-C pass-through for a keyboard case, which would then allow you to charge using the case on the outside and connect a keyboard to this, and kind of replacing the Tab Ultra C Pro with this device. I don't know what your thoughts about that are, but I think it would make a lot of sense, because you would just slot this into the USB-C. You'd be able to keep it in the case all the time, charge it. You'd have a keyboard attachment or a keyboard that would flip out. You could use the origami case, maybe in that side orientation, to be able to prop it up. That would be really cool. And then Mashup Mike says, I'll be the king of digest. And Shink says, I can't think of a use for it to save my life. Well, I laid out one, Shink. It'll be interesting to see what people do with it. I would really be able to use it well, and I'm going to try. And then Jay says, could be, it's been like this on the Note series since the Note Air 1 at least. Yeah, I don't know if that was the original design thought and process for that, but I do think that it's intriguing to think about it. And I hope they do some... I would like to see that, because everybody seems to love the functionality of the Tab Ultra C Pro, but not love the way it actually the way it actually functions. People seem to be in love with this device, and I can see why. I mean, it's very sleek, it's modern, still getting used to color. So far, I haven't found my use case for it yet. It's definitely a lot cooler to read things on, but you're getting very muted colors. So I don't know that it's something I will use on a regular basis. In the notes, it definitely isn't as easy for me because the colors are pretty muted. And if you go to my test note here, so let's go to my initial test note. And I used the outline Aaron here, so check this out. And we'll go to color strokes. And now you're going to see the colors as they render on the device. And I showed this to Melissa and them yesterday just because I thought it was pretty cool to see the difference next to each other. And other people have done this too, but let me go to my Books app here and go to my note. And if I put these side by side, now again, you can't expect this and this to look the same at all. You just can't. And that's just normal. This is 150 ppi on a Kaleido screen, and the colors are going to be muted. So you can't expect it to look the same. But when I'm writing, I've noticed that I'll change the color of the pen, especially when I get into the blues or light blues or something else, and I have trouble seeing the difference until I export. And so I think that, yeah, the brightness, and I don't know why it's so bright. It's supposed to be on auto, but for some reason it's not. So we'll take it back down. How about that? Oh, there you go. Now it's not that bright. So, yeah. And, you know, yeah, there was what I was reacting to. You can dock books like an iPad. Thanks, Aaron, for throwing that out there. I think that's pretty interesting too. Yeah, it is brighter than I thought, to be honest, on some of them. But yeah, I don't dislike the colors, Aaron. That's not my point. It's just that sometimes while they're mixed in with other text, it's hard for me to see them as well because they're muted. And it's hard for me to know how big to make them when I'm highlighting or doing other things like that. Again, not a ding, because you can't really expect more than that. Yeah, and Aaron, it reminds me of comics or newspaper too. I did download a comic. I meant to pull it up on here today. I found an open domain Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic, which Vlad Kostek uses those all the time. And the greens really pop. The main colors pop really well in comics because of the saturation, and you're not dealing with all of that white space, I think. And it really makes it stand out. The contrast levels are great. But I would definitely compare it to comics or newsprint, which of course isn't the best. Comics more so, but newsprint really isn't the best thing for color. And I think that, to me, that's where it really lends itself, especially on the writing part of it. You'll have to answer that one offline, Aaron, because I don't own an iPad. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up here in just a minute or two, but what are some closing thoughts? What are some final things that you all are thinking about? Thanks again for everybody who tuned in today. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for listening to me ramble about how this channel is going to change. It's not going to change in really philosophy, and I do have both a blog and a dedicated video to this talking about the process and the thought process that I went through and why I was doing the things that I was doing. But let me know, any closing questions, any final thoughts you all have before we go ahead and wrap this up for the day. It's been fun using a different device. I have to admit that. I do find that I miss certain Supernote features when I'm using the Books device. And I don't know if that's just because I haven't used it enough yet, or if I really need those features. I'm going to miss for sure the Supernote plugin with Obsidian. That's a big part of my workflow. Right now, I'm setting up all of my file structures the same across both devices so that I'll be able to better keep up with where things are. And now I'm not syncing old notes, obviously, onto Books because the note files between the two aren't compatible. But I am going to sync anything that may have to do with other things I'm doing on a daily basis. And I may figure out a way to export directly to Obsidian or to get things into Obsidian from Books. But again, all of these are works in progress. But what other questions do you have? Yeah, the Obsidian Supernote plugin is a huge value add. It's massive. Just being able to have real indexed searching on the Supernote the way it is, including now with the text boxes, I think is going to be something that I'm going to miss on Books. Although I may have read in the beta, and let me know, those of you who use these and daily drive them, I read where they may be working on the indexing feature to make it better for searching on Books. If that's the case, let me know. Drop it down either live or down in the comments. And let me know what your thoughts are on that, because I think that's going to be the biggest feature, is one of the biggest features I'm going to miss when I'm using the Books device versus the Supernote, is the ability to natively pull that information in to Obsidian and have it do that pre-processing, I guess, on the front end for me. So I'm not having to text recognize, I'm not having to create a PDF, I'm not having to do anything but pull over a note file. And it creates the image, the PDF, and the text, the raw text conversion that the Supernote had already been doing in the background. Captain Morgan, interested to see what you think about the Books feature for split screen. I love that you can have a notebook linked to a PDF. I haven't used that yet. I'm going to do a dedicated video just on that, Captain Morgan, just to let you know. That's on my horizon. I do love the idea of it. I've always thought that was a killer feature with Books. I think the new digest on Supernote tries to fill some of that gap, but really doesn't do it completely. It does allow you to tie a digest to, obviously, a source. So tie a digest to a dedicated document, and then you could theoretically create a note and then pull in all of your digest entries and then live edit them or alter them within that note. So it's almost like a 3-stage process. Again, that's why I talk about it with research a lot. Just if you think about reading a research article, you're kind of in that article, you're in the moment, you're adding things to the digest, you're adding comments to the digest, you may be handwriting some things and adding in notes to the annotation. You're doing all of that, and then you move over to your notebook. And then once you move over to your notebook, you can start pulling in all of the things from the digest. And again, now that becomes a living, breathing, closer to a finished document. Just one thought about the way it could be used, but that is how I could see using it. But definitely something I'm going to have to look more into. And on a larger device, I think it would be even better. So if you get to an A4 size device on the split screen, I think then you really have a good writing canvas and a readable A5 or close to A5 document that you can read and then take those notes on. But to me, it deserves its own dedicated video, so I'm not going to try to do that here. Jay says, I'd also heard that, but still developing rectangular file in the meantime. Yeah, that new app you've got, and if you all haven't seen Jay's channel, jump over there and read what he's doing with this, what he's calling the rectangular file and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but it's not just Books. Right now it's set up to run on Books, but the idea of being able to bring in, recognize, create a PDF with all different types of devices. So pretty cool and impressive. My developer hat, which I don't wear, is off to Jay because he is that developer. He's kind of the man in the weeds. But definitely check out his content. A lot of good content, especially on the Books platform and this new app that he's developing. Reading notes do what the digest does. Oh, Aaron, we're going to have a big disagreement there. I don't think so. Again, reading notes do a similar function, but it's not as again, intuitive, or is it as layered? Now, again, when I do the main video, I'll be able to speak to that more, but I'm thinking it's going to be very much similar to how I talked about the differences between the headings tool and the outline feature on Books. So headings tool on the Supernote, outline feature on Books. They do similar things, but they do them in different ways. My thought is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that basically you're tying a note to a source in Books, and then you can take all of your handwritten notes and you can manipulate that. I think you can copy text directly over to that note from Books. But I don't know if you copy that over, does it come over as editable text from Books? If it does, then they're even closer. But we'll just have to see. I think, and one thing you don't get is kind of that annotation feature that you can then, because that falls under the Neo reader. So you would have to go into an annotation, and I don't know how you get those out. So there's going to be some more research on my part at that to really make that comparison. So I'm not going to say no yet. It may do the same things. If it does, I could almost say for sure it's going to be more complicated than the way the Supernote does it, but I don't know as 100%. And I don't know that it's necessarily always going to be the same functionality. Captain Morgan, comparison of the two systems approach would be awesome. Hint, hint. Don't worry, that's coming. We will do a discussion on that as far as what the differences in approach are. Obviously, Books lets you do so much more. It lets you do a lot more things. You can go down the rabbit hole. You have to be really intentional, like I have been, to limit yourself on toolbars, to limit the number of apps and categories you see on your screen, what apps you install. Kit's talked a lot about that, being intentional. All of that, I think, is something you really have to keep in mind when you're using a Books device. Whereas with Supernote, you kind of start with that intentionality in mind, and then it's a little harder to add apps. I do like the fact that I have the ability to have Google Apps on the Books platform, although I don't know how much I'll use it, because most of the time when I go to Google and do Google stuff, I do it on my PC. So I don't know if that's going to change the way I use that functionality or not. I just haven't got there yet. Jay says, no, it'll be for everything that can produce a PDF. Okay, yeah, that's what I had thought, Jay. So eventually, now that would add friction on the Supernote side, at least currently in Obsidian, but it sounds like it could be useful for other platforms and other ways of recognizing and getting that into different systems. Maybe for something like Notion, or if you're not using that particular platform. And it says it'll be the guy in the corner, or I'll be the guy in the corner digesting the crap out of everything. Yeah. There's a lot of functionality there. All right, everyone. Well, I think I'm going to call it. Thank you all again so much for being here today. Thank you for participating. I really appreciate the engagement and the conversation. Please continue it down below. I have Discord, I have Patreon, I have YouTube. If you're not a member, if you're not subscribed, if you haven't liked it, go and check all of that out. Also, check out the Rants About Tech Discord. A lot of good conversation there. But until next time, thank you all so much. I look forward to continuing this conversation. And if you're on the replay, thank you for watching as always. Talk to you all soon. Have a good one.